I'm preparing the country to make sure that we deal with a threat from ISIL. Keep in mind, this is something that we know how to do. We've been dealing with terrorist threats for quite some time. This administration has systematically dismantled al-Qaeda and the Fatah. We just yesterday announced the fact that we had taken out the top leader of al-Shabaab, the terrorist organization in Somalia. ISIL poses a broader threat because of its territorial ambitions in Iraq and Syria. But the good news is, coming back from the most recent NATO meeting, is the entire international community understands that this is something that has to be dealt with.
The president prepares a speech on Wednesday that he promises will dig into the actual American strategy for dealing with the ISIS threat. Add to those who were on the ground that fateful night of Benghazi, who have now come forward with their side of what actually happened. The American intelligence community watches and waits for both, as does the world watching the Obama administration. They want some answers. This and much more. Let's welcome back to MidPoint from LIGNET.com, former CIA analyst Lisa Ruth, with our dig into the intelligence community. Always a pleasure to see you.
It's always good to be here.
Changes every single minute. It doesn't matter what we decide we're going to talk about. Every single day it changes. So let's get to the president then. He's coming up on Wednesday. He's going to finally deliver the strategy speech. What do you think he will say? What does the intelligence community think he'll say? But what does he need to say to make this effective?
Well, we'll start with what he needs to say. He's going to try to combat this. We have no strategy. Obviously, that's going to be his big thing. He's going to come with a strategy. That said, I don't think he's going to tell us exactly what he's doing. If you look over the weekend, we bombed the dam near the Syrian border. I think we're very close over there. I think there's going to be something about the Syrian strategy, which will include some activity there, not ground troops. He's not going to say ground troops. You know, he's going to talk a lot about this alliance with Turkey and the Arabs and NATO. But, you know, again, I don't think we're going to hear the kind of specifics we need to hear. I think we're going to hear, we're doing something, don't worry. You know, when he says we've dismantled al-Qaeda and al-Shabaab, I don't...
Which is not entirely true, because certainly al-Qaeda has not been dismantled.
No, and in fact, last week, al-Qaeda announced that they're starting a new branch in India that just came out and announced it in response to ISIS. You've got Boko Haram that is now taking territory much along the ISIS lines. You've got al-Shabaab that is launching new attacks despite losing a leader. You know, it's naive to say that by taking out a leader of these groups, you're going to make a change, or for him to say, don't worry, we've done this before. This is not only is this a whole different thing, really in terms of success, it's negligible.
We continue to talk about these groups and new terrorist groups that foster themselves, that suddenly come out of nowhere. The big question people want to know is why? Are they simply not afraid of America? Is it more about America's relationship with their foreign allies or the people that they think are the allies? Why are they consistently they're growing, they keep coming out, and they always, it's like, we're here, we're bad, stop us if you can. Every day it seems we have a new one.
I agree. I don't think they're afraid of the United States. I don't think they're afraid really of anyone. I think we provide a target for them. But it also does go back. You know, Turkey is particularly interesting to me, the fact that we had this meeting, because if you want to look at ISIS, the cold, hard reality is Turkey and Qatar, our good friends we talk about, and even the United States, really made ISIS possible. If you look at the border with Syria, ISIS would not be thriving the way it is today if Turkey did not allow them to go through. Turkey has provided arms. They talk to the people on the border and they say, Turkish ambulances go in and get ISIS fighters and bring them back out to Turkish hospitals. You know, so now we're going to have Turkey helping us?
I spoke with a friend of mine who knows a little bit about what goes on in the Middle East. I mentioned the words Arab League to him, and he laughed. He just started laughing. He says if the president comes out on Wednesday and tries to shovel in any way that America is going to really work with the Arab League and the Arab League is going to help us, he said, and I will paraphrase one of my best sayings, he said it really is bovine excrement more than anything else.
Right. Well, you know, sure, look at even NATO, and I know we're jumping around a little bit, but the response to Ukraine. NATO comes out and says, we are really on your side, guys. Oh, but no weapons, no military support. If I was Ukraine, I'd be saying you might be on our side rhetorically, but not in action. And I think that's a lot of what we're going to hear in the speech on Wednesday. I think we're going to hear, we are really going to fight ISIS, we're going to stand with Iraq, we're going to do all these great things. But where is it really happening? What are we really going to do? And working with the Arab League, working with Turkey, I don't see anything yet.
Can we just say that the bottom line is you can't trust the Arab League? End of story.
I think in terms of wanting the Arab League to push our agenda, absolutely not. They haven't before. They never have in the past. I can't imagine they're suddenly going to do a U-turn. Now, they are worried about ISIS, I will say that. They don't want them on their borders. On the other hand, they don't look at the U.S. and go, whatever you say.
But are they worried enough about ISIS basically to stop them? Because there's money flowing, there's arms flowing, there's all sorts of tribal allegiances that are flowing, there's religious allegiances that are flowing. It doesn't seem as if when you put all those things into the basket, that does not add up to one reason why they are going to do anything the Americans ask them.
Well, and as you said, people I talk to tell me they look at it as the U.S. is involved, Iran's involved, Russia's involved. We'll kind of hang out on our borders, protect our borders, but really, we're going to let those guys do the fight. Why should they commit at a time when everybody else is in there already?
Let's spin to Benghazi now. A new book coming out this week. We're learning a little bit more, finally, from people who were on the ground and know what was happening. What is the intelligence community taking away from what we have learned thus far and what still may be to come?
And the first thing is, I thought the report, and we were talking before, the commandos, it's very emotional. You know, there's a lot going on. Frankly, and in full disclosure, being part of the intelligence community, for the intelligence community, this really isn't anything new. If you look back at the congressional hearings, the base chief, who is not the station chief, okay, again, so you're talking about similar to a captain, perhaps, not a general. All right, so the base chief admitted, he kept saying, wait, let me figure out what's going on. According to him, he was concerned that we were sending Americans into an ambush and there was going to be serious, more casualties. Now, you also have some disconnect here. The commandos, the military guys, wanted to go in right away. They were looking at their colleagues being attacked and being hit. They wanted to go in. They didn't want to wait. Intelligence community is a little bit different. They're saying, let's see who we are, who we're fighting. Let's see where we can get help. I don't think this is new information or a big change, although I think seeing it on the Fox report, for example, it brings Benghazi back. You know, it forces the administration maybe to give us some answers that we don't have.
An affirmation of what we knew more than anything else.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go ahead and finally spin to Russia then. Our good buddy, the bare-chested dictator himself, Vlad Putin. Is it possible, just possible, that we have played into his hands with everything that's going on, and he now has the big bad Americans again? Ooh, look out, here's NATO, big bad NATO again. I got you guys exactly where I want you to galvanize my country.
You know, here we are. Let me take a very small incident. The day after President Obama is in Estonia, and gives this big warning, the next day, Estonia comes to NATO and says Russia kidnapped one of Estonia's soldiers. Unclear whether he was in Estonia or in Russia, but you can't tell me that this isn't a sign Putin saying, I don't really care what you guys do. Say what you want. You go into Estonia, we'll go into Estonia. There is... We like to talk about our friend Putin here, but certainly looking over the last week, he's calling the shots. He's calling the shots in Ukraine. He's calling the shots with a ceasefire. I don't think anything that NATO has said or done is a deterrent at all. He is calling the shots, and yes, I think he's won this one.
Is it possible now that what he is doing is with a re-emboldened, or so to speak, NATO, if you will, that he now has the defense policy that he can work on? He can now take this back to his country and he can say, this is why we need a better military. This is why we need to militarize. This is why we need to take over certain countries and certain ports, if you will, because here comes America and NATO. Could he use that, and is he likely going to use this anyway as a propaganda tool back home?
Sure, he could use it. One of the questions is if he has to. You know, I don't see that he needs any more justification than what he's already got. He seems to be getting everything he wants. If you look at the Ukraine situation now, keep in mind what started this whole thing was Ukraine going toward the West and NATO. Now they're talking about this again. If you've got a situation in the East where he's controlling things and they can't go towards the West, you know, he wins. I do think you're right. I think he's going to say this is why we really need to fortify our borders. We need to be aware. But I don't see that he's got even any domestic, and nobody's fighting him. He's got all the control he wants right now.
20 seconds. Has everybody in the West basically given up on Crimea at this point and said lost cause?
despite what Obama said last week, where he said we won't allow it, absolutely. I don't see any indication that that's going to change.
And no doubt that Ukraine, unfortunately, in the minds of many, may be sitting on that teetering edge as well, that the West, it's just not that big a deal. Sorry, guys.
We're going to use the right words and be really strong rhetoric, and if that's going to help them, I'll be very, very surprised.
Strong rhetoric from the government. I never would have expected anything like that would happen. Well, we should end the report every single time on that strong rhetoric, and that takes care of everything. Lisa, Ruth, always a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming by. Very, very fascinating. Later on this hour, the truth about Steven Sutloff and why he would put his life on the line reporting stories from the Middle East. And after the break, around the dial with everything from another NBA owner coming clean over emails to a president finally coming around. If, of course, there's no rhetoric. That continues right here on MidPoint.